let's take a look at what we are doing this week. We're in Module 2, and Module 2 covers sanitation. As always, our overview will give us a brief overview of the topic and our weekly objectives and a list of the weekly activities. Then we have the learning materials. In your learning materials, you will have a brief video lecture. You also have some required materials and some optional. So the ones down here that are labeled optional, that's up to you, but you might find some useful information in them for your projects. The others are not optional. You'll need to look at those. We have a section on sanitation and animal organizations here. And then we also have a list of various other articles and resources. And then we also have a couple of videos for sanitation protocols. Your first thing that you'll do this week is a discussion on governing bodies. What we're really doing here is looking at agencies and other organizations that govern sanitation in these environments that we're creating. Whether it's a zoo or a shelter, we have to follow certain protocols, and we have these organizations that we have to answer to. In your initial post, choose one relevant either government agency or some other animal organization that's relevant to your project facility. How is it relevant? What do they do? And what might your role be in keeping things up to code? If you are managing this facility, what would you as a manager do to make sure that your facility is following the codes established by this particular agency? That's your initial post that is due Thursday. In your Monday post, you will respond to one other peer. Try to find somebody who doesn't already have a response. That way we can hopefully everybody gets a response. Think about what other agency this person might want to consider in their type of facility and how that particular agency might affect their project. This is going to help in part of your course project. Make sure that you take a look at all of the instructions. It's asking you to add references. Whenever you have references, remember you need a reference section that accurately gives all of the information for your reader to be able to find those references. And in the text of your writing, you have indicated where you have used specific information from those particular sources. So you want to make sure that that lines up. If you have behind a sentence that you've used a particular resource, I should be able to go to that resource and find those concepts, words, data, whatever it is you're citing there in that resource. That's very, very important. You can also see the rubric here. If we click on the rubric button, you can see how these points are distributed between your initial post and your responses and what it is that we're looking for in each of those things. So always look at the instructions and the rubric. This week you have a second discussion. In this second discussion, which we're calling Handle with Care, you are going to select a species that you would have in your particular facility. You're going to identify a cleaning agent that you can use for that particular organism. It wants you to very specifically pick a species. Don't pick a genus, pick a species or a subspecies. So you want to really narrow it down. If we make our category too broad, like if I looked at all mammals, well, some mammals might be sensitive to certain chemicals and not others. So we really have to narrow that down. You're going to look for a particular cleaning agent, and then you are going to answer these questions. What concerns do you have when you're deciding on an appropriate cleaning agent for this particular animal? So think about that animal's behavior and lifestyle and what might work and what might not work for that animal. Are there any behavioral concerns that could tip you off that this cleaning agent is affecting that animal? Is there anything in its behavior that I might be able to witness that would tell me this cleaning agent is not working well for this animal? You also want to identify for your cleaning agent, is it a detergent? Is it a sanitizing agent, or is it a disinfecting agent? You also want to look at that particular cleaning agent. What is the recommended dilution rate? How long should it stay on the surfaces to get maximum effectiveness? So typically they'll tell you this needs to be left on for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it happens to be. And why is it important to follow those guidelines? Then you also want to think about the safety data sheet. So all chemicals will have an SDS that you can find that will tell you some of the concerns. Is it flammable? Is it a irritant? So it'll tell you some information about your cleaning agent. What health concerns do we have about the specific cleaning agent that you've identified? And then you want to think about your particular species and how it interacts with these disinfectant surfaces. So for instance, if you have an animal that licks everything, well, that might be a problem, right? If it's something that can't be ingested, then we're going to have to be careful how we apply it, how long we let the animal stay outside of the habitat before we bring it back in. So your species behavior is important here. In your response, you're going to select 2 other students. You are going to provide them with some more information by either proposing maybe a different disinfectant, or you might look at side effects of the disinfectant that they've chosen. So you're going to give them some additional information about disinfecting their particular habitat. Once again, up here, it's telling you that you need to include citations. Some of those citations can be your learning materials, so you don't necessarily have to go and find your own. You can, but that's not necessary. And again, we have the rubric that tells us what the initial post should cover and the points for it, and the responses and their points. Next, you have your week 2 assignment, proceed with caution. Here we're going to be looking at pathogens. Pathogens are essentially organisms that can make other animals sick. It could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, it could be some sort of a parasite. It is something that will cause an infectious type of disease. So you're going to write a 1,000 to 1,500 word paper discussing these things. How does contamination occur? Who is susceptible? What cleaning agent could we possibly use to disinfect and prevent outbreaks? And then we also want to think about any contraindications behind this cleaning agent that we're going to use. Is there anything that could put the animals or the people that are working there in jeopardy if we use this particular cleaning agent? And then you want a statement about how you're going to apply this information to the sanitation practices in your facility. Now that we understand a little bit about pathogens, how are we going to weave that into our sanitation practices? There's a link here for the formatting guidelines for your course project. You want to follow those. Down below, you have your grading rubric. You're identifying the pathogen, you're talking about how it is transmitted, how we can clean to protect animals against it, and all of those other things that we mentioned. You're citing your sources, you're doing the proper formatting that you saw from the link up here. And then of course you want to make sure that you're writing clearly. Think about your writing like you would if you were in a composition class. Just because we learn it in composition doesn't mean we don't apply it to everything else that we do. If we are writing an essay, we want to make sure that we have sort of an introductory paragraph. At the end of that, we have a thesis statement, which is essentially telling your reader, this is what's going to come next. I'm going to talk about these 3 things, and you have that stated in the end of your introduction. Then each paragraph after that might talk about one of those things that you listed in that thesis statement. And then you have a concluding paragraph. Make sure that you proofread those carefully too. Words grammar check is pretty good. I would always run a grammar check on anything that I write just to be safe. So that is everything that you're doing in week 2. 2 discussions, 1 assignment. If you have any questions throughout the week, please don't hesitate to email me. I can try to answer you in an email. We can also set up a virtual meeting pretty easily in Zoom. Happy to do that. Hope you have a great week.